EAGLES, Eagles.
And we begin the month of July 2026. Welcome in, everyone, to Birds 365 here across the JAKIB Sports Network, along with John McMullen. I'm Joe Krause. This is Birds 365 with Zander Krause and John McMullen. Zander now on the runway and expected back and from his trip to Italy. And breaking news, Johnny Mac, as we come on the air today, and I stand corrected, and I humbly remind everyone that it's Zander's world. I'm just living in it. And I'm just sitting in the chair for the last couple of weeks. Zander has corrected or reminded me via text that there are no live shows on the channel on Friday, July 3rd.
Oh, we switched it up.
Going into the 4th, okay? Makes more sense. And then we return after the holiday into what is a normal week that begins on Monday, and then TBD whether he invites me into the chair if you end up on making the cut on jury duty. Yeah. So, but I stand corrected. I apologize to you. I know I'm going to send Cilio for a loop because he plans everything, and I told him even as late as yesterday before he came on the air, Dan, we're definitely doing a show on Friday. Well, we're definitely has been defined. We're not. All right. All right. So no Birds 365. We do have a good show lined up today. We'll have one more show tomorrow and then break to celebrate 250 years and the 4th of July weekend and all of that that goes with it, Johnny Mac. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah, that made more sense, but like you said, stay in your lane. That's not my lane, but most people are celebrating, I guess, before, because the 4th is actually what, Saturday?
Saturday, that's correct.
Yeah, so most people are taking the Friday off, and then I guess coming back, and then you're off and running towards training camp and the countdown officially begins. But whatever people do, I hope they have a happy 4th. Take some time, enjoy it, because the grind begins shortly after.
It definitely does begin shortly after. John, big show today. We got two good guests that are going to join us, one in hour number 1 and one in hour number 2. What's the order of appearance here? Coming up at 8:20 is
Mike Gill, our usual Wednesday guest. Typically, Mike was on Tuesday last week. He'll be back in his regular slot this morning at 8:20-ish. And BLG, Brandon Lee Gouton, will be on at 9:20.
Not to be confused with
Brandon Lee Graham, as we explained last week. Both are BLGs. Most you had shortened our BLG into BG. And I said, well, that's Brandon Graham. And BLG reminded me they're both BLGs.
BLG. We'll be along at 9:20 today. John, I wanted to begin the show today with conversation about the award or the recognition that Jeffrey Lurie is going to receive. And I think it's more than just a big deal. I think it's more than just a feel good. I think we find and we expect people to give back when they have been blessed or do what is best for them in terms of what they believe. And then there's a transition between doing what you can and then doing as much as you possibly can and more. And I think what Jeffrey Lurie has done outside of football, but using football with, by the way, the incredible support of the Eagle fan base. They share, I believe, in the recognition and in the contribution. But I think it's a big deal, and big to the point that I think, to me, it's bigger than the Lombardi. The impact and the ability to change the lives of people you'll never know in a way that is so positive. I appreciate the recognition that he's going. I don't know Jeff Lurie, but I appreciate the recognition that he is going to receive, the additional awareness that the foundation is going to get, and where it goes from here. I hope it always continues, and it is taken long beyond at some point when Jeff Lurie leaves the world down the road, whenever that is, that inevitable reality. But so cheers to Jeff Lurie. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, anytime somebody and it's become bigger than for Jeffrey, it's become bigger than the Eagles, and it's personal to him. That's why it's so important to him, because of his family's history and his brother having autism. So, I mean, he's turned it into basically a passion of his, and use the platform as the owner of the Eagles to develop their autism foundation, which is, if you look at the research that they have funded, it's become worldwide. So it's much more than the Philadelphia area. It's much more than the Delaware Valley. It's become much more than that, even overseas. So that's how big it's gotten. And it's funny because Jason and Kylie Kelsey just had their annual fundraiser in Sea City, which has become a big thing. And they raised a record $1.26 million. It just came out today, and a total of over three, almost 4 million since they've been doing it since 2021. But worldwide, this thing has generated more than $100 million for autism research, and it's by far the largest, whatever you want to call it, fundraising effort for any professional sports team, if you look at it that way. But I don't even think Jeffrey looks at it that way. It's bigger than that. Although, obviously without the Eagles platform, it wouldn't have gotten to the position it's in today, but it's just outgrown that, to be honest. So it's much bigger than that. As far as, what's bigger than Lombardi Trophy, it depends who you're talking to. If you're talking about football, like the NFL, if you think about the NFL, Krause, they try to say our highest honor is the Walter Payton Man of the Year award.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not to the fans' eyes, from a philanthropy standpoint, it is. So it depends how you look at it, obviously, but it's much bigger than football. I would say that. So, but obviously to most fans, did they win on Sunday? Did they win on Monday? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, I'm not minimizing that. I just think when you dive into the numbers and you look at the body of work using football, but outside of football, with a personal connection and passion to reach or to continue to build that element, I was just happy to see the recognition. Most don't want recognition, I don't believe, when you get to a certain level, because you don't want to utilize what you do with meaning for recognition. There's people that do it to be recognized. There's people that do it because they're supposed to do it or because they want to do it. So anyway, I was moved by the story, and it came off the heels of saying, hey, the open practice in August has a $5 increase, from $10 to $15. There's a $50 VIP ticket that you can now get. All of the dollars and the proceeds and all of that funnel into what is the foundation, and every fan that buys a ticket, whether you're spending 15 or 50, feel good about it. It's a good thing to do. In addition to checking the box for your fandom and actually getting the one opportunity to see the team, in August. So it's a double win. It's a double win for the fans. Hats off to Jeff Lurie. By the way, have you ever done, John, a sit down with Jeff, or a one-on-one, or been with him in what I would describe, even if it wasn't a one-on-one, but been with him in a more, I don't know, what's the word, intimate or casual?
Yeah, I mean, one-on-one, no, he doesn't do those things. I shouldn't say that. Occasionally, you need I think Mike Silver just got some time with him from The Athletic. And I think Zach got some time with him for his book. But he's not going to certainly talk about football in a one-on-one circumstance, just from that aspect. But nowadays he only talks once a year, and that's at the NFL meetings. He used to talk a few times, and he would talk sort of right before the regular season State of the Union address, so to speak, when it was much more intimate, and you're with a smaller group. But no, never one-on-one. And, I maybe if you're doing a story on the foundation, maybe that would be more important. From a football perspective, which is my wheelhouse, to be honest, it's more important to get time with Howie or Nick when it comes to the actual football product. So, but what I will always say about Jeffrey Lurie is that he's one of the best owners in sports. It all starts with him, and his willingness to spend money, his willingness to go above and beyond to build parts of the organization that aren't capped by a salary cap that you can. But he's not a football expert, and he knows that. And part of being a good owner is to hire good people and let them do their jobs. And he generally does that. And I think the only thing I've criticized him about over the years is, he's a little bit too impatient when expectations aren't reached. But I mean, you're nitpicking at that standpoint. That's because you have high expectations.
And when you say impatient, you just mean Lurie.
Well, when I have a season like they had last season, and they won 11 games and lose in the first round of the playoffs, it's not acceptable. Somebody's got to pay for it. There's got to be a scapegoat. That's been his recent history, going back to Super Bowl 52, and after winning that and being very quick to move on from Doug Peterson, being very quick to move on from one of the reasons he moved on from Doug Peterson is because Doug didn't like how quickly he moved on from Mike Groh and his pushback against who Doug wanted to hire on the staff and things like that. And then as you get to the Nick Sirianni era, you see Brian Johnson not giving time to maybe grow in the position. Kevin Patullo not having time to maybe grow. Even Sean Desai, people snicker, but I mean, young coaches have to grow. You're going to see that this year, I think. And you better be prepared to have some patience because they're going to make some mistakes. And right now, this is kind of a mistakes aren't accepted environment, which can be counterproductive at times. But it's hard to argue with the overall success of the organization.
Yeah, I mean,
but football is my wheelhouse, so I'm honest. Wonderful to your point about the Autism Foundation, but I'm the football guy. I'm not there to ask the owner about his charities, even though I applaud him for it, but that's not my wheelhouse.
When just to expand on that impatience a little bit, I mean, do you think that's where Jeffrey Lurie then does get involved? Where if he, like in other words, when the 2025 season came to an end, at that point, because I always wondered, especially doing the green zone last year, right? So I always wondered when they went to the automatic, the broadcast goes to the automatic cut to the box, cut to the owner's box. And visually, Jeffrey Lurie seldom has any emotion at all. He's got this blank stare. Doesn't necessarily know.
And I don't know because I'm not usually watching on TV, and I don't pay that much attention to owner's box photos. But obviously it's a TV thing. Jerry Jones most notably, but a lot of Eagles fans told me last year he showed his frustration quite a bit with the offense, at least when they showed pick. Now I don't know if that's the case. That's secondhand because I generally don't pay attention to that stuff. But whether he did or he didn't, he's involved with big decisions, like most owners. And by big decisions, I mean coach, quarterback, those types of decisions. He gets involved. And in the case of Jeffrey, occasionally he'll get involved with draft picks. He likes to tell the story about the 3 picks he was involved in, and they all happen to be hits, by the way. But hasn't gotten one wrong yet. But you see him in the war room, and look, he's involved, but he's smart enough to understand that he's got smarter people about football and to let them do the job, which I think is important. I think it's very important. You get owners who are involved, like Jerry Jones down in Dallas, generally doesn't look that good. And by I don't mean it's his team he's involved. I mean involved with football making decisions. Generally doesn't end up well.
All right, Birds 365 here across the JAKIB Sports Network. Thanks for joining us here on this Wednesday, July 1st. Again, the breaking news as we came on the air, I stand corrected. There is no Birds 365 show on Friday. Back to the normal schedule on Monday, which is Johnny Mac correctly stated. That makes more sense to do. Mike Gill's going to come on and join us here in the first hour. He's in the green room. I'm going to pause for 15 seconds. Don't go anywhere so I can transition out of the show. I'll be back following the John McMullen, Mike Gill segment. Great segment, two good football minds. So stick around for that. This is Birds 365 on the JAKIB Sports Network. We're back in 15.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Thrill Seekers and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
Perfect segue, as I said last week. The Wildwoods in for we go down the shore for Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN South Jersey. Make sure you listen to the Sports Bash every weekday, 2 to 6. Mike's all over the place, 97.5, weekends here in Philadelphia as well. And here on Birds 365, welcome, my friend.
I will be in Wildwood tomorrow. Anybody down the shore, stop by Yuri's in Wildwood tomorrow. And next Friday, I will be at Pig Dog in Wildwood.
Wow, a lot of Wildwood coming up.
And I'll be in Wildwood on the 14th back at Yuri's. Anytime there's a day game for the Phillies, we go to Yuri's and watch the game, and we do our show live from Yuri's in Wildwood during day Phillies games. So
the
tomorrow,
Phillies have evaporated that Atlanta lead, man. Everybody
really
panics. Everybody, boy, I'll tell you, there's such a football mentality in this particular market, Mike. Like baseball, you're going to have these lulls. You're going to have these stretches where you look like the worst team in baseball.
And it's just really hard to comprehend, like, that you're a team like the Braves, who's a very good team, that you could somehow play at the same time that the Phillies are playing well, that you play poorly, and a 10-game lead could evaporate. You know, it's like, you're going to have a time during the course of a year where you're not going to play so good, but the Phillies might only play 500. Or,
I think timing's different. Look, if you have a 10-game lead in July, late July, you're going to win the division, even if you struggle. But it was so early that they built up. There was plenty of time. And the Phillies, obviously, in hindsight, made the right decision. Not saying you should fire. I try not to advocate to fire anybody, but sometimes the reality is in sports, Mike, you need a different voice. And clearly,
I agree. I think that the Phillies made a mistake by bringing Thompson back, not because he was a problem by any sense. It just, I think the team had felt they had gotten as far as they could, and they never changed the roster. So you got to change something. So it was more like, hey, you got us this far. It's time to try to change something up. We can't get rid of a lot of these players, so you're going to have to be the guy. Sorry, no fault of your own. It seemed that the messaging they got very complacent. It was a very complacent team. So, here we are.
Yeah, and the way by some of them talked, it was like they were waiting. They were waiting until the change was made.
It's like, we're all bored of seeing each other's faces and having the same conversation. We need some new war stories in here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, Friday, I will be hosting the 97.5 morning show, Kincaid and Salchunas. So if you guys aren't on Friday, you want to still listen to me.
There we go.
I will be hosting the morning show.
Well done, Kincaid. John's going back to Atlanta at the
end. He is going back to Atlanta.
So congrats.
He was on The Price is Right the other day. My college roommate was on The Price is Right. And
didn't he win something? I saw somebody. I think Kerr tweeted out, but I forgot he won.
John won a car, yes. But
he won a car.
He didn't elect to take the car. So he tweeted about what happens. But my college roommate is like game show Todd. He's been on 6 different game shows.
Wow.
One of which he won about $200,000 on Deal or No Deal. He won $50,000 on Fear Factor. And he did make it to the Showcase Showdown on Price is Right. Mm-hmm.
No Jeopardy. You got to be smart to be on Jeopardy.
No, we went to West Virginia. No Jeopardy for us.
I know somebody was on Jeopardy, actually. I don't believe he won, though. But
my buddy did Wheel of Fortune. He did some other game.
Pressure Luck.
No
Big,
pressure.
what is it? No
He's in his,
whammies.
by the way, we're almost 50, and he's like trying to get one more. Like
One more,
payout.
trying to get
He's
one
trying.
more in him.
He's got
Hey,
an
man,
agent.
If you want to, so
money.
he's made quite a bit. Why not?
Yeah.
If he's been successful, why not try it? But
oh, he's trying. He's trying. All right. You know, he's trying to get one more big.
Hey, by the way, Boardwalk Hall sold out Monday night.
I'm a little surprised only because generally Atlantic City does not draw well.
Well, that's what anything. I mean. That's pretty impressive.
But that building's smaller than a normal arena.
Yeah, it's about 12,000 with the TV setup. So yeah, it's not like Madison Square Garden.
Did you go?
No, I didn't. I was gonna go. But they'll let me in. They'll give me tickets. But I like hanging out with Tank, my dog. So I don't like leaving him. That's basically what comes down to.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But when they're in Philly coming up again soon, maybe I'll go there. But I try anytime they're in the area.
I haven't watched in quite some time. I know CM.
I've been kind of out of it.
But is he in any of the storylines right now?
Who?
CM Punk.
He lost the title at WrestleMania, and he's been taking some time off. Okay. So, but he was back doing cage play-by-play color.
I was wondering if he had,
but it was in Chicago. Like he doesn't like to travel. I get because he's traveling so much for wrestling.
Yeah,
he needed a break. So for those who don't know, Mike, what was that? Cage Fury
CFFC,
fighting?
Yes.
Champion Mike used to do some play-by-play for them when they were in Atlantic City. CM Punk would do the color commentary.
Yes,
and he did it. A couple weeks ago.
I saw him at Radio Row, and I might have told you this story. So our table was right here, and here comes CM Punk, and he's got the belt strapped over his arm, and he's walking with a look on his face. He's obviously getting ready to go to an interview, and he is in 100% character. So he's walking, and my producer taps me. He says, "Hey, there's CM Punk." And I was like, "Yo." And he acted like he didn't know me. He just kept on walking. Well, about 40 minutes later, I guess after the interview was over, he comes back to the table, and he's like,
He big timed you.
Well, he was in total character.
He was in world champion mode.
He had the look on his face, and he was like, and then he did come back, and like we talked for a couple minutes, but I texted him because I wanted to see if he was going to be on the Atlantic City card to see if he would come on to promote it. But I guess you said he's away, so I guess he must.
Yeah, he's taking some time off.
He's not a great texter, but he will text me back from time to time. You know who?
They're going to be in Chicago in a couple weeks. I think then that's when he's coming back for whatever.
Well, maybe during the Philly show, I'll try to get him to come on. He's a
try to get him to come on this show. Try to get him to come on this show.
Big hockey guy.
Oh, he loves the Blackhawks. If he can come on and shit on Dave Meltzer with me. He can't stand him either. So we can do that together.
Oh, you should have Eric Bischoff on. That would be great.
All right, back to the Eagles before people get too upset. It's that time. Obviously, it's a lull time of year. I like to call it list season. You see all the lists coming out. Pete Prisco was probably the most, and you'll see the Fowler list come out later. The Mike Sando list, his quarterback tiers, where you get a really good indication because those are executives and coaches who are chiming in on those of where Jalen Hurts stands. But the first notable one we got was Pete Prisco's top 100 players. He ended up in the 80s somewhere, but I believe he was the 17th quarterback. 17th quarterback. Number one, I'll criticize that list for two reasons, Mike. They're top 100 players in the NFL. Why don't you just do top quarterbacks if you're going to have 17 of them on a top 100 list? I mean, there are other good players. So number one, I'll criticize that. Number two, and I look, I think there's a lot of people that overrates Jalen Hurts, and I think there's maybe even more that underrate Jalen Hurts. There's no way you can find 16 quarterbacks in this NFL better than Jalen Hurts. Agree or disagree?
I think, this is so polarizing all the time, but I don't have any problem with anywhere he's on that list regardless, because some weeks he is 17. Now, you could say that about, but no, that's not the case. Patrick Mahomes is never 17th. He's always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And he didn't have a great year last year, even before the injury. And you're right. He's not going anywhere. Now, right. I mean, he's an all-time great quarterback.
Jalen Hurts is a guy that, is he the most accurate thrower? No. Is he the best arm? No. Does he have the best ball placement? No. Does he have anything that is in the top 5 category? Probably not. The thing that always comes up for him was, when he first got this job, back in 2021, when he took over, or 2021 at the end, he came in and he played a handful of games. And then 2022, he takes over, the team. And people wanted to get rid of him. They wanted Russell Wilson. They wanted Deshaun Watson.
No, the Eagles wanted to get rid of him. Let's be honest. There's a lot of revisionist history.
When they didn't, you would ask, what is it about Jalen? What's some of the qualities? And everybody's answer was always, he's a leader. He's a coach's kid. Like, you would hear that. It's something you don't even hear about him anymore, right? Now it's always what he can't do and what he doesn't do. But back then, no one really ever said, wow, he's really good at this or he's really good at that. It was always, he's a leader. He's a coach's kid. And then he takes him to the Super Bowl. And then the conversation just got away from that all wholeheartedly, and it became everything else. Well, here we are 6 years later, 4 or 5 years, whatever it is later. What is it that Jalen Hurts, and I'm no Jalen Hurts hater. I appreciate what he is and what he does. To me, he's a competitor. He's a winner. He is an intangibles guy, and he has flashes and moments. But I don't know where that puts you on any list. I mean, the lack of consistency is one of the reasons why I think by default you just are kind of like.
I think that's a good word, Mike, because that defines greatness to me. Like exactly. I always say,
that's my point with Mahomes is no matter what, Mahomes, you're watching him and you're saying he's one of the top 3 or 4 guys I'm watching. This week he might be the best. Next week he might be the 3rd best, but he's never the 10th best or the 15th best. Josh Allen, he's the 2nd best or he's the 5th best, but he's never the 15th best. There are some weeks where Jalen Hurts, you're like, he's the 25th guy I watched this week. The lack of consistency in terms of, now, is that him? Is that the offense he was in? I don't know. I think we're about to find out.
Yeah, I don't know. Pro Football Reference, I mentioned it. They do a Hall of Fame monitor. And, if you're a football fan, I always encourage everybody to look at it. If you want to sort of compare eras, because they do a good job comparing guys versus their peers. Wide receiver would be the best example. Like, the game has exploded so much. The wide receivers of today have much bigger numbers than, say, Cliff Branch or John Stallworth, got great receivers in the Drew Pearson in the 1970s, but that doesn't make them any less great because they dominated against their peers. I say that to say the definition to me at quarterback, and when you do these lists, you almost have to define it first. Like, what are you grading? And to me, I define it. I'm grading consistency from week to week. And I didn't even know, but that I always say the best regular season quarterback I've ever seen is Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. I mean, and why I define that is because
or what you could say, John, is exactly what I'm saying. If he's not number 1, he's number 2, 3, 4, or 5. Nowhere exactly. Left. He's somewhere in there always from week to week. He was either the best guy this week, the second best guy. He was never the middle guy or the end of the road guy maybe once or twice in a 16-game season. But over 16 weeks, 13 times he's either the best, the second best, or the third best.
Yeah.
That's not where Jalen Hurts is in. Look, we did over-unders yesterday. The Vegas numbers came out for some of these guys. Jalen Hurts over-under passing yards, 3,100 yards. I mean, that's an average middle-of-the-road guy, right?
Yeah, certainly from a number
22
standpoint.
touchdowns. Yeah, well, 3,100 yards and 22 touchdowns. If at the end of the year they were his over-under, at the end of the year, if that's his numbers, 3,100 yards, 22 touchdowns. Now, it also has 410 rushing yards over-under and 8.5 rushing touchdowns, which I think is going to be very interesting to see if he gets to this year, because is the tush-push still a part of this offense? Is he going to have design runs in this offense for him? All of the rushing off-script plays that maybe made Jalen certain weeks go from middle of the road to top whatever, 10 or top 5. How much of that is still going to be a part of this offense remains to be seen. But if they're his numbers, 3,100 yards, 22 touchdowns passing, and then 400 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns rushing, the rushing part of it is what jumps off the page. I don't know that he's getting those rushing numbers this year, but if he's got 3,100 yards passing and 22 touchdowns, that's probably number 17.
Yeah, you can make an argument. So maybe I was a little bit too harsh on
Prisco.
Thank you. But you know, he's been.
You're thinking about who was Meltzer.
He's been so great. No, I don't think about that guy. He's been so great in big moments, particularly in the 2 Super Bowls. I think that skews things for people. So that's why I was bringing up the Pro Football Hall of Fame monitor thing. So, you know, they try to compile it into one number, like a war-like statistic, and they came up with Tom Brady number 1, Peyton Manning number 2, which I was very happy with because I have it the opposite: Peyton 1, Tom 2. But it's not like, you know, Unitas is 5th. You know, they're grading, you know, guys in their era. Fran Tarkington is like 10th. So
we
it's
have
not
no
like
way of translating the game from then and how those guys, because athletically and physically they weren't as big and strong as
but I and that's why I think it's important to judge people against their peers, not in, you know, because I always say my analogy is the time machine's got to work both ways, because today, you know, guys make this enormous money. You've seen the stories about Derrick Henry claims he spends $1 million to take care of his body every year.
Right.
Well, back in those days, they'd have to sell insurance in the off season. You know, so if you take Derrick Henry out of this and put him back then, he's not going to be the Derrick Henry of today, even if he's born with the same genetics and the same advantages from that aspect. He's not going to have the equipment. He's not going to have the time. He's not going to have the ability to take care of his body the way he does now.
Well, let's bring a guy into the conversation real quick. I want to get your thoughts on, because he's the guy I think everybody can relate to it and remembers, you know, relatively. I would imagine the audience will kind of remember Joe Montana pretty, you know, vividly. How would a Joe Montana fare in today's game? Because like that game was different than this game, but it was somewhat similar. Like Montana was the first guy to really do this West Coast offense. Like you never really saw it back then. Now a lot of people are bringing it back and running it again. So would Montana be better today, or would teams be more equipped to stop him today?
I think he wouldn't be as
relative, like to your point, John. He was the Peyton Manning before the Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
He was the guy that you said,
and he, by the way, on the list is right behind Unitas. He's number 6 all time. It goes Brady, Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana.
Brady, Manning, Brett Favre. See, I would take probably Montana over Favre.
Well, I think a lot of people would, but
I mean, when I grew up, Joe Montana, you were watching something like it was like watching Greg Maddox pitch. I mean, this guy was just like perfect ball
and he's
placement.
4-0 in Super Bowls, and But the thing about, like, to your point, more people are using the West Coast. Well, they're not really. Like they're using a scaled down version of it. Like
they're using today's version of
yes.
Yeah.
So I think he would be less in this environment because you're looking for different things. You're looking for athleticism. You're looking for mobility, more of a dual. Not he was very mobile for a traditional style quarterback, but the actual RPO zone read stuff, you're looking for more athleticism. You're looking for different things today. You're looking for one read guys, quick processing, as opposed to, he would be great in a pure progression. George Seifert told a great story when he was saying when they made the transition to Steve Young, George Seifert got frustrated because Steve Young was great in his own right. But early on, he got frustrated because he couldn't go through all the progressions like Joe did. And he said, he went to Joe and he said, why can't he do this? Why can't he do what you did? And he goes, I'll tell you a little secret. I'm not going through all the progressions. I'm ruling out guys. He's reading the defense and saying, all right, this is what they're playing. I'm going to rule out these guys before I even snap it. And he's going 1, 2, 3, basically, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And George Seifert, the head coach, didn't even know.
I look at a guy like Montana, and I think that he would be able to I think he's an obvious guy that could play in the game. He just, the different, like Montana is interesting because he's small compared to some of the other guys that you think of. Drew Brees was a smaller guy. You mentioned Favre. He had a cannon for an arm. The different traits that these guys have that make you say they could play today. I think Favre would excel today, maybe even more so than back then with the rules. You can't do anything. So Favre would be firing. John Elway was another guy, that you would watch back then and wonder if he would actually be better today. Because Elway, he was a guy that could run, but back then, like, it was unheard of, or it was just kind of happening to see the quarterback start to take off a little bit. You wonder how much more Elway would have been utilized in today's game. He probably would have been like a Josh Allen, right?
Well, I don't think he's that athletic. Josh Allen.
No, but I said like a Josh Allen, where he doesn't run all the time, but when he did, like he could,
from an arm strength, like he was the Josh Allen of his time. I think that's fair. But I think the athleticism.
And by the way, both of them now, obviously, Elway got 2 Super Bowls and lost, and then he ended up winning the Super Bowl at the end.
Well, it's not what I always say about John Elway. When he was the best quarterback in football, he was losing Super Bowls. And when he was a bad quarterback at the end of his career, he was winning Super Bowls. And nobody remembers that.
But like Josh Allen could be on a similar trajectory so far without getting to the Super Bowls, but all the playoff losses, and maybe if he keeps hanging on, he turns into John Elway.
Maybe that happens for him.
Yeah.
Same with different with Ben Roethlisberger, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But
what about a Dan Marino today? Because Marino was so quick and great arm, but couldn't move all that much.
No. Well, you'd have to play, that's up to the staff. They have to build around him. Obviously, if you have Dan Marino, you're playing more of a traditional pocket style game, and smart coaches would take advantage of that. But
that's what about, like, back then, he stands in the pocket and he's just delivering stuff. Today's game, there's a lot more movement, and you've got to be able to kind of. Now, he had good presence where he could sidestep and kind of get it, much like a Brady.
Yeah,
but Marino would be another guy that you would. No, not Marino.
Marino's just a great pure thrower of the football.
Yeah.
if you think about that era, I would always think the two best pure throwers of the football were Dan Marino and probably then Warren Moon, who had an incredible just arm talent.
And we're talking about all these different talents. Everybody had this thing about them. That's where Jalen is really not in the conversation of, well, he's got this great arm talent or he's got this great thing. He's just, what's the word? I don't know. What is, and it's not a knock. It's not a knock. It's
no. I've always used the term unique to describe him because he's not a traditional quarterback. And you have this whole group that wants to turn him into a traditional quarterback. And then you have another group to say he can do anything. Well, he can't do anything. He can't, throw the football like Dan Marino. He can't.
Well, for instance, Emmitt Smith, not big, not the fastest, but wildly regarded by many as one of the best. Whether he's the best or the fifth best. You talk about running backs, you would say Emmitt Smith is in the conversation, but there's nothing that you can measure really that stands out about why. So you would say similar things about Jalen. What can you measure that stands out about Jalen? I don't know, but I'll still put him in the conversation with the people who are the best.
Yeah, I mean, so, I think people are going to take this as an insult, and it's not an insult. So on their Hall of Fame monitor, he is currently, he is the 60th best quarterback of all time.
Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
I mean, now I'll have to sit here on the top of my head at
that's awesome, by the way, for people that don't know. 60 is really good.
To say that I could probably, to get to 60, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks you could just start ripping off and being like, oh my God, I'm already at 40.
Yeah,
they say that these guys are really good, and he's in that conversation. That's
he does not reach the Hall of Fame threshold, which he shouldn't this early. He's got to do well. They have sort of the great Hall of Famers. There's only 11 of them: Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Drew Brees, John Elway, Dan Marino, Fran Tarkenton, Steve Young. Those are the no-brainers. Then they have what they call average Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford leads that group. Now, whatever average Hall of Famer is, Patrick Mahomes, Matt Ryan, Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Bart Starr, Terry Bradshaw, Russell Wilson, Roger Staubach, Dan Fouts, Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, which I don't agree with, Lamar Jackson, Ken Anderson, I do agree with. That's one of my pet peeves. He should be in the Hall of Fame. Ken Stabler, Sonny Jurgensen, Bob Greasy, Warren Moon. And that's the Hall of Fame. Warren Moon is the Hall of Fame threshold
Hall of
for
Fame,
them.
Right?
He is in the Hall of Fame. He's the guy you got to be better than. And underneath him, the first guy is Cam Newton, Joe Namath, who's in, Len Dawson, who's in, Boomer Esiason, Josh Allen, Joe Theismann, quarterbacks like that. Troy Aikman, who's in, Jim Kelly, who's in. In their estimation, those guys shouldn't be in, but Jalen's in that grouping. It's pretty good.
It's going to be interesting to see in 15 years.
By the way, Donovan and Randall are both ahead, though. Both ahead of Jalen Hurts.
That's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see in about 15 years, maybe even less, to see
true too.
Where their passing numbers don't stack up with the Hall of Fame passers, but their total yardage numbers do and surpass them.
Yeah, it's always the vote. We've been lucky enough to have a ton of voters on this show. Damo being the most notable, but from other cities, Jason Cole and Ira Kaufman from Tampa, and D. Orlando Ledbetter from Atlanta, and I'm missing people we've had, and I'll think of them. I'm always so I've talked to a lot of these guys over the years who have Hall of Fame votes, and I never know which way they're going to go. There's certain players. Like I covered Minnesota for a long time, and when Randall McDaniel came up, I'm like, okay, this guy is a no doubt about it Hall of Famer. I mean, one of the best offensive linemen of all time. And it took him 4 years to get in, something like that. Not a long time, but I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, and sure enough, I got the Hall of Fame monitored up. He's graded as the second best guard of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took him 4 years. Now, John Randall, who I said, great player, I thought it would take him quite a bit to get in because there's a lot of edge rushers. There's a lot of pass rushers. He's more of a defensive tackle, undersized, undrafted guy.
Yeah.
I thought it would take him a lot. He's first ballot. I don't.
Well, a lot of it depends on who's on the ballot with you.
Yeah, that's true too. But I guarantee you there aren't 4 guards better than Randall McDaniel year after year after year.
You said McNabb and Randall were both ahead of Hurts on this trajectory.
Yes.
Now, if Donovan McNabb was the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles in this offense during this era, would they have been as successful? And by the way, I am a huge McNabb guy, but I'm still wondering. That's where Hurts.
I don't think they would be.
That's where Hurts. I think the intangibles and whatever innate something.
And I certainly don't think they would have been with Randall Cunningham either.
Because Donovan obviously had
I don't think they would be.
He had he had better physical tools than Jalen did. But this is where you incorporate what that innate something that we talk about with Hurts that you can't really quantify or measure usurps McNabb in my estimation. And I'm a huge, I was a big McNabb guy.
Yeah, and I always thought of Donovan as a borderline guy who wouldn't get in because he didn't win the Super Bowl.
Just real quick to interject, if you gave Donovan the weapons that Jalen has had, you can make a strong case that he, in fact, would have won when he had.
The irony of it, Mike. You know why I think they wouldn't be as successful? Because they would think they could do more with Donovan McNabb.
Yeah, that's very possible too. But as we said, when you gave McNabb TO, he was basically an MVP candidate with the 1 year that he had TO. So if you would have given him A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith for 4 years, I can make an argument that they would have.
The numbers, the individual numbers would be much better. And I'm not sure the team success would be better.
I had a fun conversation with Donovan at the Super Bowl this year about the quarterback wide receiver relationship. It was pretty fun.
A great player, doesn't get the credit he deserves. Probably, you know what? He'd probably be a Hall of Famer if he just got one Super Bowl.
Or if he had a receiver of not even TO's ilk, like a Devontae Smith level player for multiple seasons. Like he didn't even have like Devontae Smith, some guy on the side of the road. He didn't even have a tier 3 level wide receiver for most of his career.
Yeah, look at Carson, man. Carson threw for 4,000 yards and none of the receivers had 500. How do you do that? That's amazing.
There was a time, man, where Wentz was a special player, and
very short period, but yeah,
it was a short period. And I look at it's funny because Ben Simmons is in the news this week.
Oh my God!
And, I think both of those guys suffered a very similar fate, where they had these quick, short, explosive rises, and then the injuries derailed them to almost unrecognizable dispositions, and you were like, the guy sucked. And it was like, he didn't really suck. Wentz just got beat up. And I don't think he ever recovered from the multiple injuries that he went through. To be what made Wentz special was the off-script plays, the ability to improvise. And he couldn't do that anymore with all the injuries he had. And he wasn't the most accurate thrower, and he wasn't all that stuff. So when he couldn't do the improvising stuff, he just became a random Joe. But for a little while there, he was pretty darn good.
All right, since you brought up Ben Simmons and the Sixers, by the way,
yes,
I mean,
yes,
what
hashtag yes.
He has no self-awareness, Ben Simmons. The Sixers did make a move. Obviously, they don't have a ton of space or ability to do anything with their new basketball brain trust, and they bring in, of course, a guy from Cleveland. I got to tell you, I don't know
West
that
Virginia,
much.
John. He's from West Virginia.
Well, I meant Cavaliers.
Well, okay, Gansey is from WVU, but
no, I'm talking about Dean
Wade.
Dean
they
Wade.
signed Dean Wade last night.
And he comes from Cleveland, which is where Gansey comes from, the West Virginia. He comes from the Cavaliers. I don't know. I saw this guy in the Eastern Conference Finals. Didn't look too good. What can you tell me about Dean Wade?
He's what this team has not had in the past. He's a wing defender. He basically will be the guy who defends the other team's best wing. He's a pretty good defensive player, and he's a catch and shoot guy. He's just the fifth option, that will stand around but it's a player that the Sixers just generally never have. The guy who he's on the other team, and you're like, this guy's hitting threes against us all night. Who the hell is he? That's who you just signed. It's the guy that catches the ball and no one covers him because he's not a threat. And he just has to knock down open threes. And that's, that's a job in the NBA now. I'm the guy who catches in the corner and just shoots because no one's covering me because I don't do anything else.
All right, Dean Wade, because I don't do anything else. Well, he's a good defender.
Well, you look at his scoring. He averages about 6 points a game, which means he hits about 2 threes a night. I mean, you just got to hit him at the right times.
All right. Boy.
But he's a very, very good defensive player, which is something this team has kind of lacked, that wing guy he's the guy who say you're going to go match up against like Jason Tatum, or you're going to go against the other team's best wing. And he doesn't get a lot of credit for that because on the other end, he won't score all that much. But now you say you defend their best player. The problem is on the other end, he doesn't give you all that much. But if he hits a 3 here and a 3 there you go. Now but again, the Sixers have 4 guys that can score when they're on the floor together. You don't really need a guy to score all that much.
All right. At Mike Gill Show, make sure you follow Mike on the X platform, at Mike Gill Show on YouTube as well. You can see all the clips and interviews from his show on 97.3 Down the Shore. Mentioned going to be morning drive at 97.5 in Philly on Friday. Feel free to tune in because we will not be here. We'll be competing against each other, Mike, in a little way. But I'll be off on Friday.
Friday I am on. I'll be on hosting by myself, actually. So I'll be Kincaid and South Tunis on Friday show.
Are you going into the? Are you doing it? Are you doing it remote, or are you going into the studio?
No, I'll be in Philly. I'll be in the studio.
All right.
And Sunday I will be on 10 to 1 in Philly, and of course I'm on every day down the shore 2 to 6.
All right, plenty of Mike Gill. No excuses not listening to Mike. Always a pleasure to have him, and we'll check in next week if you're around.
We'll see you next week, I guess.
All right, buddy. It's always good to catch up.
All right, good stuff there from Mike Gill here on Birds 365, hour number 1 of 2 in the books on Birds 365. Thanks very much for being with us in hour number 2. BLG is going to come up and join us around 9:20. So we shout out to Mike Gill and also Johnny Mac. More breaking news in hour number 2 to add on to the breaking news from the beginning of the show. Zander weighing in from Italy again today as a follow-up.
He's chomping at the bit.
No, as a follow-up to my question back when he clarified that there is no show on Friday, there is also no show on Monday.
All right, so we're getting a long weekend. All right. I got time to recharge the batteries.
Yeah, so no Birds 365 on Friday. No National Football Show on Friday. No Birds 365 on Monday. No National Football Show on Monday. And you can kill me in the chat for it. I guess I was confused when I was first saying that there's no show on Monday because I remember that part of the conversation. But what I didn't realize is that it's bookends, Friday and Monday. So no show Friday, no show Monday, Johnny Mac. And Birds 365 will return in its truest form with Zander Krause and John McMullen in its best form.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, which would be July 7th is Tuesday. And then
and who knows? I forget. I have to check. It's either July 7th or July 8th where I have to cross my fingers when it comes to jury duty.
Yeah, and I think it works the same way, Johnny Mac, where you have to, well, in Pennsylvania, the night before your schedule.
Yeah, the night before you got to check, and they take a group, and
you got to check an automated line to see whether or not you're actually going in. I think that's
that's the way they do it here, South Jersey as well. So you got to check the night before, and you cross your fingers that they don't call you in. But last time I had to go, I was ruled out. I didn't have to go in. So I'm not feeling positive this time.
Meaning what? You called in the night before and you were excused?
Yeah.
I mean, you were told you were told your group did not need the report.
Correct. So I don't know if it's, how random it really is. Who knows? But we'll see. You're at the mercy of the overlords of the Camden County.
Yep, that's the way it works. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I guess I better put myself on standby just in case and see if Zander calls me in out of the pen. I don't know. He may or he may not. It's his world, brother. So we'll see what happens. But again, that update now confirmed, officially confirmed. No Birds 365 and no.
All right, so tomorrow is
our
final.
Yeah, it's our final.
It's the last one. It'll probably be just you and me as everybody bails out for the holiday weekend. But we'll see. I'll try to rustle up somebody. But
well, I know one thing about today and tomorrow from what they say.
It's going to be hot.
It's going to be hot. And I'm very zeroed in on this, on the weather, Johnny Mac. I don't have a lot of hobbies. All right. What I do for a living or what I've always done in my life and my family has always been my hobbies. I don't fish. I don't hunt.
No golf?
Play, but I don't play to play. You know what I mean? I play if I get an opportunity to go out with my boys or something like that. So it's not anything that overcomes or takes over, a piece of my time or a part of my life. So I have been wanting for the last year. I have had this incredible fascination with weather. And I have been wanting for the last year an actual weather machine that I can set up and I can install this solar powered weather machine.
Weather machine. And then I get. Is that what John Belair's calls himself now?
Well, so my daughter Isabel surprises me with the for Father's Day with the you're not gonna be able to see it, but the Vantage View, the Davis Vantage View weather machine. So we're going to install that weather machine down in Cape May this weekend. We're going to install it. And then I'm going to be able to get, as soon as I understand how everything works, it updates every 2.5 seconds. It factors in all of the pressure, air pressure, and all of this that circulates. And then I have a monitor, so I'm gonna be able to get constant updates.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, so
Davis Vantage View wireless weather station.
Yeah, so I am super excited about my weather machine. Now, I don't know if that means, Johnny Mac, that later on in the year
you're gonna give me the heads up on.
I'm gonna do weather updates. Daily weather updates, but that's part of what that's one of the things I'm super excited about. So we'll see how that works and how that plays out as what I could truly say will be my first hobby in my life. I like to bike ride. I love to walk. I love to.
That's a hobby.
Yeah, it
bike
is.
Ride.
It is.
Maybe not walking. Well, it's a good habit. It's a good habit.
John, I'm creeping up now to almost 29,000 steps a day.
Wow.
In terms of walking, so I've continued to increase that. I have to do it in stages. Obviously, I can't do it all in one shot. And I have multiple different routes and multiple times of the day, and all of that stuff that I do that. But yeah, I have been on that run now, really since I received the Whoop as a gift. And I don't want to get lost in
how many miles does that equate to? Do you know?
I think that equates to somewhere, and somebody in the chat probably can tell us, but I think it equates to 7-8 miles a day.
Oh, that's nice. That's
right. Is that right? Maybe it's more. It's the one thing the Whoop doesn't convert. The Whoop doesn't convert it calculates the steps. It calculates all the metrics that come along with that, but it does not convert into miles. But I'm sure you can probably easily do it. I've never done it, but I just always am motivated to make sure that if I don't get my step count, I got to do a longer walk, or I got to change the pattern. I got to change the the route that I'm going to take on a daily basis to make sure that I get
the Whoop route.
Yeah. So I got to make sure that I do. So even Eastern football on Saturdays, right, where we bring you all the action, I'll get out to the stadium. It's a 12 or a 105 kick, and I'll get out in Wayne. If it's a home game, I'll get out to Eastern, and I'll walk the field. I'll walk the ring around the field to make sure that I get the necessary steps in. But anyway,
yeah, it's nice when you have a field.
Yeah. So I keep doing that, and we'll continue to do that. But the weather machine I'm super excited about. If there's anybody out there that has one and wants to buy them, but it's this big culture, John, and I'm excited. Maybe John Bolaris is the guy I got to reach out to at some point.
There's a lot of weather people.
Yeah,
I like the weather chasers. Those guys.
Yeah, no, they're different. Yeah, weather chasers that use the weather machine to know what they're going to chase. Yeah. So they're different. But anyway, here on Burst 365 with John McMullen, I'm Joe Krause. Shout out to everybody who's out there watching today, and please make sure, based on weather reports, that you consume a tremendous amount of water on days like today, especially when you're drinking coffee or drinking tea.
Yeah, I'm drinking coffee
in the morning.
That's to stay awake.
And if you're drinking anything that is a dehydrant, make sure you're replenishing with plenty of water. It's just important to do.
Certainly is. Yeah, everybody stay hydrated this weekend. It's going to be 100 plus for the first time in a long time locally. We have a lot of listeners from outside the area, but locally, it's going to be brutally hot. So everybody, now you should be a little bit better and see Cape May near the ocean. But
yeah, we'll have a nice breeze there, and hopefully by Sunday I'll be able to bring you the wind conditions and everything else down in Cape May. Johnny Mac, let's get into hour number 2 here, and again BLG coming up at 9:20. I was trying to zero in a little bit on Devontae Smith since he was drafted and since he's been with the Eagles. And when you sit down and look at his numbers and what he has been able to accomplish, I wonder if you come to the conclusion that yes, Devontae Smith was part of a 1-2 punch when he was married up with A.J. Brown. But given the skill set and the talent of Devontae Smith, without A.J. Brown going into the 26th season, Devontae Smith is still going to have a Devontae Smith year. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think he's going to, I think from the standpoint of statistics, he's going to beat it as long as he continues to stay healthy. And he's been, that's the most impressive part, I think, with Devontae Smith. We all thought coming in, I don't think anybody doubted he could play, winning the Heisman Trophy, but you were concerned about how slight he is, and can he hold up? And he's been tremendously durable throughout his career in Philadelphia. Missed a game here and there, but not much at all. And now he's quietly adding weight. He's never going to be the biggest guy in the world. He just doesn't have the frame for it, but he's always been very physically tough for his size. He's built like a wire, that's the best way I can describe it. There's not, I know when they get body fat percentages, they'll, say 8%. You can't see any of it. I'll tell you that. He's always in tremendous physical condition. So, as long as he's playing the entire season, the numbers are going to go up because the targets are going to go up. He's always been effective. I mean, like I said, there's about 90 things you're worried about coming into the season. He'd be very low on that list if you're talking about all 90 players on the offseason roster. He'd be near number 90. He might even be number 90 of the guys I don't worry about. I literally don't worry about him. You can always come up with something. Like with Lane Johnson, there's a Hall of Fame player, but we were worried about the age and the injuries. You worry about those things. With Devontae Smith, there's nothing to worry about. You know how good he is. I worry about the other guys. I worry about the Mekhi Lemons and the Dontavian Wickses and the Hollywood Browns. Devontae is going to be good. Very good. And it's just a matter of can you get more of an aggregate from a bunch of different guys to sort of give you somewhat near the production of A.J. Brown, which is probably much less likely. but with Devontae, it's, he's kind of a no-brainer as far as I would go. And I'm trying to think, maybe Quinyon and Cooper, because they're so young, you don't worry about them. But even, the nature of the position, the nature of the cornerback position, gives you a little bit more concern, because there's a higher, I would say, there's a higher possibility of having up and down seasons playing corner than playing wide receiver. So yeah, I don't worry about Devontae Smith at all.
When the defenses are preparing for the Eagles' offense, no matter what it is, whatever it is, or whatever it becomes, and Devontae Smith is clearly what would you say? The number one playmaker on offense, the number 1, 2, 3 playmaker between Saquon.
Well, certainly number one in the passing game.
Number one in the passing game. Yeah. So when the defenses are preparing for that, does that make how much harder does that make it for Devontae Smith to have as much production as he's had and increase what he's done to date?
A little bit, because there's gonna be more focus on him. But I still think, teams will start with Saquon, and that'll be the goal to stop, and then sort of bleed over to Devontae. So I mean, he'll see some better corners, and he'll see more double teams. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but I also don't think there's any doubt that he can beat those things. He's going back to his Heisman season at the highest level, obviously in college, the SEC. I mean, he was certainly seeing double teams. It's not something he's not used to. I don't see a lot of avenues where Devontae Smith is going to have a bad season.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I don't even think it's capable. I mean, people will talk themselves into anything. They'll say, well, AJ didn't have a good season. Well, yeah, maybe he didn't for AJ, but he had a good season compared to most receivers in the NFL. So, people's expectations always skew things, but I'd be far more worried about Mekhi Lemon contributing as a rookie, Dontavian Wicks being what the Eagles are projecting him to be, and if not, Hollywood Brown stepping up or Elijah Moore stepping up. I'd be far more worried about those types of players than Devontae Smith.
Yeah, and whether or not they have the ability to continue.
Yeah, well, certainly in Mekhi's case, he certainly has the ability. He's a first-round pick for a reason, but I do think we have to see it. And until we see it, it's funny. We're doing our top 25 list over at Eagles on SI. And, 25 was Tank Bigsby, 24 was Jake Elliott, 23 was Mekhi Lemon. And let me say, so the list is compiled. I vote for my top 25. Ed Kratz votes for his top 25. And Jeff Kerr votes for his top 25. And then we sort of, assign points for each and come up with the list, the official list. And that way you get more than one mind putting it together. And full disclosure, I did not vote for Jake Elliott or Mekhi Lemon to be on that list. Because Jake's coming off a second consecutive subpar season, Mekhi hasn't done a thing. You know,
Well,
I mean, you have to see it first, but he does have significant talent. But
and to your point on that, John, the criteria for the vote is what?
Criteria for the vote is best pure football player, as I describe it, because I'm the one who came up with it. As I described it, it's who does their job the best. Bill Belichick rules. So, you know, the reason I don't like most, you know, whatever word you want to use, impactful, important. The reason I don't like that is because it's always the quarterback. Like, I'm not trying to. The quarterback is the most important player on every team in the NFL, whether that quarterback is Matthew Stafford, the MVP, or that quarterback is J.J. McCarthy, who I think is the worst starting quarterback and is not even the starter anymore. He's still the most important player on his team. If Jalen Hurts got hurt tomorrow, Tanner McKee would become, or Andy Dalton, would become the most important player on the Philadelphia Eagles. Are they the best player? Hell no. And that's what we're trying to do, get the best players on the team. And that's why I didn't vote for those two guys, but I can't control other people's votes.
Yeah, well, let's get into BLG. Brandon Lee Gouton is going to join us. No break, Johnny Mac. I'm going to pull BLG up. I'm going to drop off, let you guys jump right into it. By the way, I'm not even sure. I think the selection of Mekhi Lemon into the list
23
waters down the credibility of
you know, and
that's not,
you know, to be fair to those guys, I've voted for rookies in the past. When they drafted Jalen Carter, I put him on the top 25 because he was so gifted. You're projecting. It's more of a projection. It's the top 25 players entering the 2026 season. You know, if Mekhi Lemon is not much higher on our list next year, something went drastically wrong. But I'm just like, until somebody does it, I got to see it first. And plus, as BLG will tell you, we didn't get to see a lot of Mekhi Lemon in the spring because the first practice open to us, he was there, and then he had a hamstring. And he missed the rest of the offseason. So
let's get him in here. Let me bring BLG up. I'm going to drop off Johnny Mac. I'll see you right up before we close out. Let me bring BLG into the convo.
There he is, BLG. Welcome to the program. Happy 4th in advance to you, BLG. Glad to have you as we are. You know, we were just talking about the receivers. I'm sure you heard a little bit. And you know, I look at, we got 91 really, because you have international pathway guy, which is currently designated for Uar Bernard. But, you know, if I ask you the question, who are you least worried about of those 91 players? I've said Devontae Smith's at the top for me. You know, that doesn't make him the best player on the Eagles. But I mean, there's always something like Lane Johnson's a Hall of Fame player, but you're worried about age, coming back from injury. Even cornerbacks like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they're young, but the cornerback to me is more of a volatile position. It's more apt to see up seasons, down seasons. So I could make a strong argument from my perspective that Devontae Smith is the guy I least worry about on this roster. Can you think of somebody you worry about less than Devontae?
Devontae is the name that came to mind, rather, first, like you said, especially because, you know, while there's also volatility, you know, with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, they're also still like young. That doesn't mean I'm expecting a massive drop off, but, you know, they're young guys. They could have a weird year. Something could happen. Or they're not even in their peak yet. Whereas Devontae Smith should be where he is at age wise and development wise, where he's kind of at the top of his game, both like mentally and physically. So that was the name that came to mind. I would put Saquon up there. You know, I know he's older, quote unquote, for a running back, But the way that guy takes care of himself, like I'm just not worried about that at all. I think he's ready for a major workload and will be awesome. So I think Saquon belongs in that conversation as well. Maybe like Zach Bond as well.
Yeah.
I know
he's underrated after 2 great seasons. I don't know how you can be underrated, but if you can, he is, because we're doing our top 25 list, as I said, over at Eagles on SI, and I'm like, I'll just say I'm not spoiling anything. We're giving out a player every day, but he's very high on my list, and he wasn't as high on other people who are doing the voting. What more does Zach Bond have to do?
I'm really interested to see what he does do in year 3, where, there was a lot of talk about this last year, where like the first season was so incredible, and that was without him even really fully knowing the position, the way he's certainly come to know it since then. I think he talked about that in the spring, even when he's talking about how more so in the holistic perspective of the defense, about how he feels like the defense can be taken to a whole new level entering year 3 of Vic Fangio, and just having more comfortability in the scheme, and everyone, probably just gelling and being on the same page. And then Vic probably trusting the guys more maybe than he has in the past couple of years, just because of how they've played together. I do think it's exciting to think about him. And while he's 29, like he didn't play a lot.
He's a young 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
He barely played in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So there's less tread off the tires, so to speak. So yeah, I'm amazed at how good Zach Bond has been. I remember that preseason game in Baltimore where he had a really bad game, and you're like, ooh, they're going to start Zach Bond at linebacker. This could be ugly. And it was not ugly at all. So it was one of those things that, let's be honest, in a way they kind of lucked into it. I mean, Howie signed him as a sort of Andrew Van Ginkel light player who was going to rush the passer in sort of a situational role. And Vic got a look at him and said, nah, I think he's an all-ball linebacker, and the rest is history. I mean, he's been, Fred Warner got hurt the one year, last year. You could argue he's been one of the best 2 or 3 linebackers in all of football in his stint here. And he was so good. He wasn't quite as good last year as he was the year prior, but I mean, you can't put together that type of season year after year. He was still really, really good last season. So glad you brought up Zach. I think he's a true strength on the team strength, and that's the defense. We were talking about Mekhi a little bit, though. And look, he's got a ton of talent. We didn't get to see much of him in the spring because he hurt his hamstring, and I'm not terribly worried. I agree with the Eagles' approach. I mean, if it's even a little bit tight, why are you going to bother risking aggravating it in the spring? So, I'm sure he'll be there day one, and he'll be ready to go. But I mean, I'm not as, and again, I go back to Devontae Smith. I don't know. And I'll ask you, because you're at training camp every day, and we had come off sort of a stretch there of such poor receiver play. I don't know if you can take yourself back to when Devontae got here, BLG, but if you can, I remember saying, oh God, this guy's different. Because we had gone through the Jalen Ragers and the Travis Fulgham stretches where you're like, I should say stretch, not plural. Just really poor wide receiver play, or at best mediocre. And he just stood out like, okay, this guy's different. Now, I don't get that feeling right away like I got it with Mekhi Lemon, but then I start thinking to myself, well, I've been watching Devontae and AJ over the past 4 years. So we've seen the other end of the spectrum, just phenomenal wide receiver play. So I don't know if it's that, or But I don't strike this. In other words, I don't see this guy as stepping in and he's going to be like Devontae Smith and being an impact player from day one. Do you have an early feel on that?
Yeah, I'm going to be quick to either like really buy into Mekhi once we see something from him, or I'm going to be quick to be pretty skeptical if we're not seeing it, because I think this isn't like a raw upside kind of player. This is a polished receiver in terms of like what he's being billed as and what he is in theory, and a guy that this team needs him to be a volume option basically right away in 2026 here. So if we see some glimpses, even in training camp, of him looking pretty good, I'm gonna be like, okay, I think this guy can play. If it's the opposite and if it's struggling, like I know it might sound silly to be like, I'm gonna make a definitive judgment on him as a rookie, but again,
I hear what you're saying though.
I think that's kind of what he is though. Again, he's not a guy who's like, oh, it's gonna take some time. Whereas like, let's say by contrast, Eli Stowers, I think is that kind of guy. It's gonna take some time here. I don't think you're gonna expect big things from Eli Stowers year one. I think the Eagles are expecting big things from Mekhi Lemon from year one, and it doesn't mean he can't have a good career if he has a slow start to his career. But I'm gonna be quick to either believe in him or be skeptical based on what we see early
on. It feels like we can never get through a show without talking about the quarterback, but I do want to bring it up from one perspective because I don't think I brought it up to you in this way before. I want you to put on Howie and a Howie hat. So you're the GM of the Eagles. You know what's coming. So I'm going to reverse engineer this. And because I think of it from this perspective, like there are very few players in this league that I want to pay $60 million to, even if they're quarterbacks. What can outside of winning another Super Bowl, Can Jalen Hurts even convince you that he's worth $60 million a year moving forward? Now, remember, this isn't the first extension. This would be the second extension. So he's older. The running skills either have diminished by purpose or by design, or he's descending or by design. What can he do to convince, if you're the GM, that I'm a $60 million player?
I think in a vacuum, you can kind of get worked up about the money, but in the context of like, that's what the market is, and you either have a quarterback or you don't, I think you probably just kind of have to do it unless it's very painfully obvious that you can't because he's, playing terribly or injured or something, and it becomes a no-brainer to kind of try to move on. Even then, like, what does moving on look like? Jalen Hurts has a no trade clause. You can't just like do what you want with him. But I will say, when you look at, the Carson Wentz situation, you look at some of these other contracts that Howie Roseman has not hit on, but has signed, and they've been bad, even just in recent history, like Bryce Huff. I know it's a different example when you're talking about quarterback money, but my point here is that I would believe in Howie Roseman to be able to figure it out if things go wrong. If you pay Jalen Hurts and things go wrong, I think Howie has earned the benefit of the doubt that he can navigate that situation. It might not be ideal, but I think you kind of have to lean on that side as opposed to trying to get maybe a little bit too cute and trying to save money. And then you might end up in a spot where you just don't have a quarterback.
There's been somewhat of a mentality that at some point, I've heard it from a few people, that at some point it's going to turn into more of a college-like. And I shouldn't even say college-like because college has changed so much. So if you go pre-NIL college, a college-like mindset. In other words, it's gotten so expensive, to your point about the market, and it's only going to go up as the cap goes up. And that's going to impact your ability to build a roster, that maybe you start thinking about, all right, well, we're going to have to roll this thing over every 3-4 years. And maybe you build the back end of the roster better, but nobody's done it. Now, the Eagles pride themselves, even though they're playing copycat on offense, typically they pride themselves on that. They do have confidence in themselves as the quarterback factory. Do you think they could be that team that says, you know what? Maybe we'll get competent quarterback play and we'll try to do it another way. Do you think that's a possibility, or they're firmly in the camp of just what you said? You either have a quarterback or you don't.
Yeah, I think it sounds nice in theory. You know, it probably works if we're playing Madden here, but you know, you have the human dynamic element of it all, which can be complicated. You also have the fact that the owner really likes the quarterback a lot, which is certainly another factor. Here's something that I think maybe deserves to get talked about a little bit more than it is, which I don't really see it talked about, is that while I am kind of reluctant to believe players, you know, take a discount or, you know, or take less
Dallas
to help
Goedert, he does.
That's true. But, and you know, certainly quarterbacks mostly aren't doing that. Leaving a ton of money on the table, and nor should they, because, you know, I'm all for the players, you know, making as much as they can. And I think it's good for, you know, like the union and, you know, trying to help, you know, get more money for everyone. I don't think it's good to artificially suppress the market, but that's besides the point. I think it's fair to say Jalen could have kind of raised the stink about his contract to this point.
Oh, yeah.
Bigger than he has, considering there's 11 quarterbacks who are making more money than him annually. And a lot of those guys do not have the accomplishments that he has. He's obviously not been perfect, but I mean, ultimately he has the results on his side. And if he really was one of these guys who was like, you know, I'm not playing until I get paid, if he kind of had that attitude and maybe was a little bit less about winning than he is, you know, I think he could have put the team in a more difficult spot. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, looking forward, he's not going to take you like this massive discount, but he might work with you a little bit more than, you know, the generic top quarterback would.
Yeah, that's fair. I you know, Tom had that reputation. Tom Brady had that reputation for years, taking a little bit less to try to build up the roster. I could see Jalen Hurts being in that camp. It's probably more of a, like, I saw Patrick Mahomes. I think I told you that before. I saw Patrick Mahomes' contract, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to pay that guy that. And that's Patrick Mahomes. So that's probably more of a personal hurdle I got to get over. And to your point, it's not my money, so what am I worried about? But it is. But I have heard it around the league. We brought up a name there, though, and that got me thinking, because I'd written about this a couple of weeks ago. Dallas Goedert. If there's one guy who this offensive scheme is going to help, he'd be my number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anybody higher than Dallas Goedert? I mean, think about George Kittle. You think about Tucker Kraft. You think about all the tight ends in Los Angeles. I mean, he seems to be the guy that, like, should be the most excited that they're moving to this style of offense.
I'm really excited, or really rather curious, to see what this season looks like for Dallas Goedert. You know, I think he had a good year last year. It's kind of a weird year in that, you know, the touchdown production obviously was way up. The yards per reception were not. How much of that was a function of the offense? You know, you can debate that. I still think he can play, certainly as a pass catcher. I don't have any questions about that. I do question what his run blocking looks like, because it wasn't good last year. And, you know, I think you could say, well, no one was really good at blocking on the Eagles last year. Fair point. However, I think the offensive line wasn't good at blocking because they were just so banged up, basically, and beaten up from the previous season. Now, maybe there's some of that from there with Goddard, but I don't think that was the issue. I don't think he was, like, injured as much as we didn't kind of see. I don't like calling out players' effort, but yeah. I don't think we saw the most motivated version of Dallas Goedert. I think that's fair to say last year. And, you know, I wonder how much of that is because of what happened with his contract last year. But then he comes back this year for even less money. And now he's another year older, too. You could say maybe he's more resigned to the fact that he couldn't get what he wanted, so he's maybe more realistic about a situation. I don't know, but, like, I think that's kind of a big factor of it all. If he's not nearly the same blocker that he was previously in his career, which is a pretty good blocker, like that concerns me.
Well, to your point, I think it's less because I've thought about that as well. I thought, well, he's probably pissed that he had to take the financial haircut, 14-10, and maybe that's why you didn't get, even if it's subconscious, you didn't get the same kind of effort in the blocking aspect. But then he comes back for even less, and he makes it very clear that he just wanted to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So I in some ways I think that's worse because that means he's declining as a blocker. He just is.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be more concerning. And I do think it's important. We saw a lot of 13 personnel in the spring. And boy, I got a problem with that because I think a lot of teams are preparing that way because they saw what the Rams did last year. And I'm like, the Rams did it because they have 5 tight ends. And they're like, we got a bunch of good tight ends. They're not doing it just to do it. They had that Devontae Adams got hurt. They didn't really have much behind Puka. And they're like, but we have a bunch of good tight ends. Let's play a bunch of tight ends. I think other teams are like, well, let's play 13 because the Rams had so much success. But you don't have, and now they have Max Clare, but they had Parkinson and Higbee, and they had 4 tight ends, Terrence Ferguson, and I'm missing somebody, and they're all good.
Mm-hmm.
And the Eagles, look, Eli Stowers might be a great player down the road, but there's going to be some growing pains. And right now, he's not a capable blocker at the SEC level, never mind the NFL level. So to me, that's going to take some time. Grant Calcaterra, one-dimensional. Johnny Munt, one-dimensional the other way. Cam Latu, one-dimensional the other way as a blocker. You have some pretty good players, and Johnny Munt's a very good blocker, and I think Cam Latu is a very good, proved it in short spurts as both a fullback and tight end. And Eli Stowers might be a difference maker as a receiver. But the Rams their group does everything, with maybe the possible exception of Ferguson. Why? And it's not just the Eagles. Why do you think other teams look at that and say, I want to do what the Rams do? Well, by the way, BLG, I think if Sean McVay gets better receivers, if he got A.J. Brown, he'd be right back to 11 personnel.
Yeah, I don't think the Eagles have the tight ends to say, hey, let's get 3 of them on the field and let's run the crap out of the ball. Like I don't think they have the personnel for that. Now you can say maybe they don't have the personnel for that receiver, or you want to spread out into 11 and then do that. Given that you lose A.J. Brown and you might kind of just, you feel good about Devontae Smith, but you question what's behind him. So I like Johnny Munt. I think you're looking at some nice 12 personnel packages. I feel a little bit better about that. 2 tight ends on the field. You mix that in there. Not living out of that, but I feel good about that package there, what you can do. But I mean, ultimately, we can talk about the packages and everything like that, but I think, to me, the bigger concern is just like kind of what I hinted at there, like the personnel.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of my concern. And that's a wider concern than just the Eagles, because it seems like a lot of people are sort of, and that's the way the NFL works, that one team has success, people follow it, but I think you have to look behind why the Rams did it. I don't think they did it just because, hey, we want to go heavy because everybody's playing light on defense. I think that's kind of the perception around the league, whereas they did it because they had some issues at wide receiver, and that was their best path forward from a personnel perspective, which, by the way, I think all teams should operate that way. I think that's a feather in Sean McVay's cap, because for years he had been the 11 personnel guy, and all of a sudden he changes, which I think is the definition of good coaching, because he took advantage of the players he had. And that's going to be the story with this offensive coaching staff. Entering camp, as you get to 4th of July and we start to think about it, is there a bigger story than just how Sean Mannion handles this whole thing? do you think, with this team this season?
I think that's the crux of the success or not for the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of what we don't know. Like, we know the defense is going to be really good. It'd be shocking if they weren't. So you feel like, okay, it's almost not even interesting, almost not even fair because of how good they are. They're just like, whatever, they're great. Put them off to the side. I mean, the question is, and then this isn't even just like outside speculation. This is the Eagles' own actions. They told you with what they did that was a very big issue with the team. And, Kevin Patullo was, I think we would all agree. I mean, not everyone would agree, but I think you and I at least would agree that Kevin Patullo was not the only issue that the team had, but ultimately the team decided that he was a very big one. And they're really relying, I think, on the mind of Sean Mannion and just how intelligent, football savvy he is. That's what everyone seems to be talking about with him. I think that when we talk about, are the Eagles chasing a scheme? Are they too late and everything? I think that's a fair question. But I think my guess is their pushback would be like, we really like the offensive mind that Sean Mannion is, and we think he can maximize the talent we have here. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure on a guy who has 2 years of coaching experience, never called plays, just like Kevin Patullo had never called plays, but Patullo was certainly more experienced, for whatever it's worth, than Mannion is. So it's a huge projection. It doesn't mean it can't work out, but you're really kind of flying blind here.
I have this in my notes, and I keep meaning to ask you this, and I'm going to sneak it in under the wire before the 4th of July weekend. Our buddy Jeff McLean did the big article a little while ago on Julian Laurie. It was mainly positive, I would say, but there was one little point where I said, uh-oh. And I want to see if you took it the same way, and that was the purse strings aspect of it. And the mentioning, we saw some of these guys leaving, and maybe now we have the reason for some of these guys leaving. Like, that's weird. Jake Rosenberg's leaving. That's weird. When Bryce Johnson got a promotion, but Dave Caldwell's leaving. We're all like, well, he got a job at Florida. And I was told Howie was big in getting him maybe the golden parachute, so to speak. And, we talk about Jeffrey Lurie being one of the greatest owners, and you never know when, a family member comes in, are they going to operate the same way? And in a salary cap world, there is no salary cap in the front office. And Howie has used that in that budget to bring in, high-powered executives with experience, whether it was Dave Caldwell, whether it was Matt Russell, now Joe Douglas is back. Any concern over that? Because I said, this could be a problem. It's obviously going to be down the line, but I think the Eagles have a big advantage when you look at some of these other teams. Washington before Josh Harris, Cincinnati, just bare bones operations. Like Jeffrey would say, yeah, go get who you need, go get who you want. It might be more strict now.
Yeah, I certainly have to give the Eagles credit for, being one of these top teams in terms of cash spending on the players. There's no question for a prolonged stretch, they've spent the money there. I would expect that to continue. But when it comes to, I think the phrasing used in McLean's article was like, trimming the fat a little bit. I mean, is there really, like, you're a billionaire. You have plenty, like, this money you're spending is a drop in the bucket. It's easy for me to say it's not my money, but like, really it is, like, just relative to how much money your net worth is, like, and the fact that, like you're saying, when there's no limit to the money you can spend there, you can create an advantage for yourself. What's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is you're kind of like excessively spending, but to what end? To the end that like you're going bankrupt? No, you're a billionaire. You're going to be okay. Maybe you're spending a little bit more money than you would like in a perfect world, but if that's the worst case scenario, like, I think you have to live with that if you're serious about winning and trying to do literally everything you can. Because the worst case scenario, you're spending money you don't need to, a little frivolously. The upside is you win Super Bowls. You do what it's all about. and you have a lot of resources and a lot of good talent on your staff, not only for the present, but also stocking a pipeline for the future as well, for that when these people do leave, and how he's talked about the importance of that, you have people that you feel like you can promote and you can kind of keep this thing going. So that would be concerning if we start to see more cutbacks.
Yeah, so some big names, and then you just look at the they did hire Mike McCagnon, who is a former GM, but if you look at his title, I'm going to bet he doesn't make as much money as Dave Caldwell was making. And if you look at Grant Ryder, who's taken over for Bryce Johnston, who took over for Jake Rosenberg, he has a much lesser title. So not to say they can't do a good job. They could do a good job, but generally, if you lose good people, and, the Alec Halaby situation was weird because, we're all told, well, he's leaving for a job outside of football, which I don't believe, to my knowledge. I don't know if you saw anything, but that has not come to fruition yet. Just a little bit weird on the business side of it, with some high profile people that have had some big time success in this organization leaving, that now this could be the explanation for it. Something to put an asterisk on from my perspective. Is that too harsh, or are you going to put an asterisk on it as well?
Yeah, it's like a file away. We'll monitor this one. Yeah, no one's saying it's a,
no, and it's certainly not going to be immediate or anything like that nature. Yeah. But
put it in your back pocket.
Yeah, Jeffrey's still going strong, thankfully. But he is 74ish. So sometimes life gets in the way, and the strong ownership of this team is a big part of the success that they've had. So it's fair to say that. And a strong part of this program at Brandon Gouton. Make sure you follow him on the X platform, bleedinggreennation.com. We'll keep you up to date every day on your favorite team. And again, I say happy 4th of July, BLG. I hope you enjoy the extended weekend, and much appreciated whenever you hop on the program.
Absolutely. I'm going to stay inside and try to stay as cool as I
can. Yeah, it's going to be hot. Hydrate as well. I should have told you the hydrate.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, there we go, Johnny Mac. Good stuff with Brandon Lee Gouton jumping on for the hour number 2 segment here on Birds 365 as we wind down to the top of the hour. Again, another reminder, tomorrow will be our final show of the week, and then a much-deserved extended weekend, which includes Friday and Monday.
Yeah, by the way, can I say something? Because every time we take a day off, I'll get a snide comment. Well, I thought it was Birds 365. I'm like, what that means is anytime, 24/7, 365, you can go on the YouTube channel and you can click on, and we have content for you. Now, we try to do every show, but we take the weekends off, obviously, on a normal week. But that's what Birds 365 means. Anytime you can get information on your favorite team. And by the way, also download the podcast, listen to the podcast, because we get big numbers there as well. Tell Alexa to play Birds 365. She might pop up in the background. But yeah,
anyway. We'll have content populating
exactly
on YouTube, on the channel, on Friday and Monday. You're a text away from an Eagles big move, which we don't anticipate any of those from Friday and Monday. And by the way, it also is an opportunity for JAKIB Nation to take a break, to breathe and get ready for the other side of the holiday weekend, and really start to zero in on not only the Eagles reporting, but whoever's playing, I guess, in the Hall of Fame game this year, they're certainly reporting sooner than the Eagles are reporting, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, a week before. I forget who it is. I'll look it up real quick. Yeah, they have to start a little bit earlier. So, the 21st is I believe the first teams come in. The Eagles are one of the latest. They might be the latest. It is Arizona hosting the Carolina Panthers. Wow, that's a doozy. Woo. That's a good one.
That's your Hall of Fame game lineup from Canton.
That is August 6th, Thursday, August 6th is the Hall of Fame game. Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, which they've redone. It used to be a high school football field, and people would get injured, and so they have a brand new field. So that part of it is cleared up. But Arizona, Carolina, get ready. Exciting.
By the way, why are the Eagles the last team to report? Is that by choice? Are you given a certain window of time that you have to report? How does that work, Johnny Mac?
No, well, I think it takes care of itself. They're just a week later, and some teams have rookies come in a day or two earlier. The Eagles no longer do that. They've always been that's they in the off season you can have 10 OTAs. They had 6. You can have 3 mandatory minicamp days. They had 2. They always leave meat on the bone. They made that decision years ago as a cost benefit. The idea is, well, the old days are gone. You don't have the time to prepare you as you would like anyway. So the main goal is to get to week 1 as healthy as possible. That's sort of the cost benefit that they made, and it's worked for them. It's hard to argue with. So, when it comes to practicing, they're at the lower end of the spectrum. In the NFL, usually at the very bottom. Now, they would argue that, well, they do different things, walkthroughs and meetings, and, they're still preparing, just not actual defined practices. And again, I used to push back on that, and I say all the time, I've never met the football coach that doesn't want to practice, and I still haven't. But that's an organizational decision, and one that's hard to argue with right now because they've had so much success.
We'll end it right on that note. Birds 365 with John McMullen and Zander Krause. I'm Joe Krause sitting in for Zander on this July 1st. I leave the broadcast today reminding everyone in the chat to stay hydrated and remain cool over the next couple of days because of the heat. And I also say to you, Johnny Mac, happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Only got a few more of those. Hopefully I can last to the end of
July 1st. It's another $1 million check or whatever the number is. I don't even know what it is. And
a little bit over $1 million.
Yeah. And it goes for whatever. It goes for a long time. Yes.
I think it goes to 2036. So wow. I think we're inside of, we're about a decade out where Bobby can't count on that check anymore.
Right. Okay.
So 1.193 million to 1.193248. So that's the exact number.
That's the check amount.
That is the check amount. It's his 16th installment. And he's got 9 years left through 2035. So it's a year off. 2035. He'll continue to get that check every July 1st. All
right. That's going to do it for Birds 365. Eagles Daily will be up at 12 today. The National Football Show will be 2 to 6 with Dan Cilio. John and I will be right back here for our final broadcast of the week, and we'll do all of that tomorrow. Thanks to everyone for being with us today on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Johnny Mac, thank you, brother. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.